Let's talk about S3 lifecycle policy followed by a quick hands-on. In Amazon S3, different storage classes have different storage and retrieval cost. S3 standard has a higher storage cost compared to other storage classes. As a cost optimization strategy, many applications move objects between different storage classes to reduce the storage cost. This is where S3 lifecycle policy becomes useful. An S3 lifecycle policy automatically move or deletes object based on rules you define, helping reduce storage cost without any manual effort. There are two lifecycle actions that S3 offers. So one is the transition and another one is the expiration. So the transition action automatically moves object to lower cost storage classes as the data gets ages and is accessed less frequently. For example, it can move data from S3 standard to S3 glacier automatically. For transition actions, object can only move in one direction, so as shown on the screen. For example, you cannot transition an object from S3 standard infrequent access back to S3 standard using the lifecycle policy. However, you can directly transition an object from S3 standard to glacier deep archive as well, skipping the intermediate storage class levels. So you can see the transition flow here, where you can see the direction from which storage class you can move object to which storage class, and you cannot move back as I mentioned earlier. So for the expiration actions, it automatically and permanently deletes objects after predefined period. For example, you can automatically remove application log files after 90 days. For version buckets, lifecycle policy can manage both current and non-current object versions. So when a current object expires, S3 adds a deletes marker instead of permanently deleting the object. To reclaim the storage and reduce cost, configure separate lifecycle rules to transition or permanently delete non-current versions. Also, S3 intelligent tiering does not require transition policies because it automatically moves object between its internal access tiers based on the continuous usage monitoring. For S3 Express Zone 1 zone as well, it does not support lifecycle transition actions. Okay, so let's now understand the cost implications. So one is that so each storage class has a storage cost, so that anyways you have to pay when you store the objects in them. Second is the minimum storage duration. So now S3 has configured certain minimum duration for different storage classes. For example, you can see in the table the minimum storage duration. So when you move object into them, you need to keep an object for that duration, and if you move an object before that duration, you have to pay for the field duration. For example, for S3 standard infrequent access, the minimum duration is 30 days. So if you move object from this storage class to any other storage class, let's say you move after 20 days, you will be charged for whole 30 days. So you need to keep this in mind, that because this has a cost implications as well. The third one is the transition request charges. Okay, so let's go to the S3 pricing tier, and now you can see here there are certain charges for the transition request, and these charges are majorly for per 1000 requests. So if you say, let's say you transition 1000 objects to S3 intelligent tiering, the cost is $0.01 per 1000 requests. So if you transition, let's say 10,000 requests, 10,000 object to intelligent tiering, then the cost will be 0.01 into 10 because it is a cost per 1000 requests. So this is an additional cost then you need to pay for the transition request as well. And the last one is the storage overhead cost, which is applicable only to the glacier storage classes, where you need to pay for the metadata cost. So along with the object, there is a cost for the metadata that we need to pay. So it is around 32 KB of the metadata will be charged as per the glacier storage class rate, and 8 KB of the metadata will be charged as per the S3 standard rates. So along with this object cost, you need to pay additional cost for the metadata for around 40 KB of the size. So that's it about the theory. Now let's do a quick hands-on understanding how do we configure the S3 lifecycle policy. I have connected to my Amazon console. I have opened one of the bucket that we created earlier. So to configure the policy, let's go to management. Here the first thing you'll see is the lifecycle configuration, and we have an option to create a lifecycle rule. So let's click create lifecycle rule, give an appropriate name to this. So I'll give one name. Anyways, I won't be creating this, I'm just giving a demo. Okay, so now there are two scope you can see here. So one is that you apply the scope to all the object, or you apply the scope to limited object. Okay, so let's first select the second one. So this will be applied to all the objects in the bucket. So irrespective of their type, all those objects will be transitioned as per the configured lifecycle rule. But if you go to the first one, you can actually transition limited set of objects. So instead of transition everything, you can define the prefix, that what kind of object you want to move. You can define the size, you can define the tag as well. So here you can configure the tag, and based on the object tag, only those objects will be selected for the transition. You can also select the minimum object size and maximum object size to transition based on the object size as well. Now for the action, you can transition the current version. So as I mentioned in the theory, that for the version bucket, you can set a different life cycle for current and non-current version. So this is where you can configure. You can transition current version, you can transition non-current version, you can expire the current version of the object. Okay, you can permanently delete the non-current version of the object. You can delete expired object, delete marker, or incomplete multi-part upload. So these are the different actions that you can perform. Let's select one of them. So you can see that transitions are charged per request. So this is something we discussed about the cost. That's fine. By default, object less than 120 KB will not transition across any storage class. So it says we do not recommend transitioning object less than 128 KB because the transition cost can outweigh the storage saving. So if your use case requires transition object less than 128 KB, specify a minimum object size filter for each applicable lifecycle rule to transition action. So by default, it will not transition the object which has a size of less than 128 KB, because if it does, then there is a higher cost of transition rather than the actual object cost. And this is where you can configure the transition actions. So you can see the choose the storage class. So let's say, so currently my bucket is configured for this S3 standard class. I can move to S3 standard infrequent access or any other class, and then you can select after how many days I want to move the object. So I can say 12. Okay, so it says that a minimum of 30 days is required before transitioning to a standard infrequent access. So it's asking you to store the object in standard class for 30 days before you can move it to standard infrequent access. That's not an issue, that's okay. And then this is where you can see review your rule, that on day 0 object will be uploaded, on day 12 object will move to standard infrequent access. So this is about the transition. Let's select any other option. Let's say expire current version. So for expire current version of the object, you can select the after how many days you want to expire the object. So it's simple as it is, and then you can permanently delete the object. So you get an option that days after objects become non-concurrent, number of newer version to retain. Okay, so this is now there are two options. You can define the number of days as well, let's say 30, or you can also mention the number of newer version to retain. So let's say you want to retain only latest 5 version of the objects, so you can say 5. So all the non-current version will be removed. So that means if anything older than latest 5 version will be removed as a part of this action. And then delete expired object, delete marker, or incomplete multi-part upload. So here you can delete the expired object, delete marker, and then delete the incomplete multi-part upload. So if the object is expired, it will be removed. So this action will remove expired object, delete marker, and may improve performance. An expired object delete marker is removed if all non-current version of the object expire after deleting the version objects. Okay, and you can also delete the incomplete multi-part uploads. So this is about a quick hands-on on the lifecycle rule. I cannot show you the actual transition happening because then I need to set the policy and do it, but you can also try from your end and it is straightforward as you can see on the screen. Thank you for this session. We'll continue with the next session.